episode 57 of the podcast. This week we're talking about how trust starts at home, some things that owners can be doing at home that will make life easier for them and their dogs. And we're also talking about naming what we're doing, using words and helping dogs understand exactly what is happening. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Neumeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, certified behavior consultant for canines, certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is where grooming and training meet. It's rarely just the nail trim or just the grooming. When I ask more questions, I find out that many owners know that their dog doesn't like being touched in an area or in a particular way. And the average owner doesn't see that that's the problem. If you're having trouble touching an area of your dog, that isn't going to be fixed or fixable during grooming if it's not being worked on at home. Because trust starts at home. So being familiar with being touched everywhere starts at home, and being comfortable with handling and care starts at home. So what can owners start doing, and what can they start doing right away? I want them to start when a dog is calm. And we're going to quickly review what relaxed looks like. I want them to be still, but not stiff, still and loose, and to be able to feel that the body is loose. You should be able to know if your dog is relaxed. When they tense up, that is now stiff. When they're loose, when you can touch a foot and it moves a little bit, when you can touch an ear and it doesn't pull away from you, those are all signs that your dog is calm. So to build on calm, and to start with a dog that is calm. I want our owners to be doing this very, very safely. This should be safe for our owners. Any advice that we give an owner should be safe for them. If we think that their dog is a danger, we should be sending them to a professional who is going to help them with that specific behavior problem. Okay? So when we start with a dog that's calm, we want to build on that calm. We don't want to have to push them beyond what they can handle and then regain calm. We want to build on that calm. We want to figure out what they're comfortable with. It could be basic petting on the head that they're comfortable with, and then slowly moving hands around. It could be snuggling on the sofa and placing a hand on their rib cage. They could be comfortable with a whole lot and just this one little thing, or they could be very uncomfortable with a wide variety of things. What does this individual dog need? What is this individual dog comfortable with? What does this dog find a tiny bit challenging? Because we want to know when the dog has switched from being comfortable to a little bit apprehensive. We don't want it to be all or nothing, comfortable or freak out. And we want to help them take something that was comfortable and build on it. So it could be that little bit of apprehensive, that moment where a dog thinks, wait a minute, am I still comfortable with that? That could be their body stiffens. It could be that they turn their head to look at what you're touching. Just a little bit of a head turn, like, why is she touching my ribs, right? It could be that they hold their breath, right? For some dogs, that's one of those signs of a stiffen, like a, why is she touching my tail? It could be a very, very small sign. And those can be kind of hard for some owners to catch on to unless you actually spell it out for them, which is why I'm spelling it out here. It could be that he holds his breath. It could be that he stiffens. It could be that he looks over at you. For some dogs, it could be a position change where they try to move away from you, or roll over belly up, or tuck their tail, or pin their ears. It could be that there's a little bit of a sneer, right? A curled lip. Hopefully that's not one of the ones that we push to, because we don't want a dog to feel like they have to be in a situation where they have to tell us to knock it off. Like that's pushing it a little bit too far for these purposes, for what we're sending owners home to do. Right? Because owners will get a lip curl and either stop or press harder. And we don't want the lip curl at all. We're trying to work sub-threshold from lip curls, right? We don't want dogs being defensive. We want them to be like, what's happening? Yeah, okay, I can handle it, right? So this is much more subtle than that. We don't want to be in these adversarial roles with our dogs for this purpose. We want them to be relaxed with us. And notice I'm not saying to grab a bunch of cookies or toys. I want this to be snuggle petting time. Like straight up dog owner snugglies and talking and petting. So each individual dog is going to be a little bit different, but when we tell our owners we want them to be comfortable with it, and if you notice something change, that's the tiny, tiny, tiny point, right? Don't keep pushing it because that's just going to push them to fail. We want them to get it right. We want the dog to get it right, not just the owners, but the dog too. So if we go back and we reach a point where they're comfy, and maybe it's, I'm going to give the example of like sliding your hand up toward their ear, and they pause for a second. Well, we can either pause right there or back off a little bit. And even if we do pause right there, we're looking for comfy. We want them to relax for us and then move away. The purpose is for the dog to start thinking, I was a little bit uncomfortable with that, but oh, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe that's all right. Maybe that was pleasant. Okay? And to just get them to the point where they're comfortable and little tiny, tiny challenges. Little bits of challenge. Little bit next to the ear. Ear as an example, because it could be any area of a dog's body. It could be an old injury or even a fairly fresh injury. Maybe it's a dog who has always been really, really comfortable with stuff, but had surgery on an elbow. Now it's their elbow, right? Which normally isn't a part of the dog that a dog would be worried about. Like their elbow, what? You know? But sometimes we have to reestablish some trust. Like, hey, dude, it's okay. I'm your parent. We're just going to hang out together and I'm going to get my hands on you. And I also think that when we're doing it with that mindset of I'm teaching you that you can trust me. You can be comfortable with me. I just want to touch you all over, be able to inspect if you are okay, get both of my hands on you, right? So the point where we can pause, if the dog relaxes more and we back off, we're building trust. If the dog doesn't relax more and we back off, we're building trust. Interesting, right? Either way, if we notice that point where they stiffen a little bit or look or notice that something has gotten a little bit uncomfortable, if we work on that little bit of uncomfortable, we are building trust. If we go beyond that little bit uncomfortable, that's different. And for these purposes right now, what I'm describing is stuff I want owners to do at home. Just keep them comfortable and do a little bit. Okay? So returning to comfortable teaches them that little bit of touch happened and it wasn't a problem, right? Things got a little weird and then we went back to being comfortable. So when I say back to comfortable, that's still hands-on comfortable, right? I don't want us to just let go, right? We're touching and we're snuggling, and then we move a little bit into something that they're not real sure about, and then move back to comfortable. Slide to unsure, move back to comfortable, right? We just want unsure. We don't want straight up, leave me alone, right? We want just a little bit of, what are you doing? And then back to comfortable, right? And that teaches trust. But by staying with our hands on the dog, we're setting them up for some real life handling. Because if you just let the dog go and the dog walks away, that's not a real life situation. If you have a dog that's something that needs to happen, that we're worried about that dog being aggressive or something, they need to be working with a professional trainer, right? Like this isn't something that I can necessarily give advice about on a podcast, right? So if you think about, these are the average dogs that just need a little bit more, okay? Now, if the dog thinks that it's stressful and we calm them down again in our hands, we have built trust again, okay? I want you to be thinking about, it's about building trust. And calming dogs down in our hands is important. And it's one of the big mistakes I see a lot of owners make and dog professionals make. right? We either complete what we needed to do and then everybody let's go and see, it was okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, get him some cookies, right? Like that kind of tells them you struggled and you struggled long enough and hard enough and now you can go, right? We're actually building endurance struggles when we do that. When we bring them back to calm with us, like, hey, relax, you're here with me, everything is fine, right? You might even have pushed them a little bit further than you meant to, because sometimes dogs surprise us and just calm them down again. Like, hey, all right, let's just take a moment here and let's just pause here together and relax. But that's all part of why we need to find the comfortable starting point. That's why we need to figure out what their comfort zone is already so that we can build on calm and not try to regain calm. We want to build on calm. We want to know what their comfortable starting point is. And each individual dog is going to be a little bit different. For one dog, that could be being on leash and even walking close next to you and maybe like brushing your leg up against their body. All right, if that's the individual dog you're working with, you should be working with a professional trainer. That shouldn't be something that owners are just like, oh, hey, look, he let me walk past him today. Like, that's not a safe situation. Even if it's a dog who wouldn't hurt you, that's a dog who is in significant stress. Okay. But it could be a dog who is comfortable with everything except for maybe their tail. So the comfortable parts of touching them could be their entire body till you get near the area of the tail. Like, don't just go straight for the tail. Go to the areas near the tail. See what point the dog is worried about instead of just going straight for the tail. I think sometimes we go straight for the problem. Like, oh, he doesn't like having his feet touched, so we're just like right to the feet, you know? But a lot of those dogs that don't like having their feet touched give you some little indications as you slide down their leg from their shoulder. And sometimes it's when you pass the elbow. You slide down their shoulder and you get to about an elbow and they kind of give you that little slight stiffen and start watching your hand like, is she going from my foot? Right? Instead of going for the foot, work on this whole being comfortable with my hand sliding down past your elbow. Right? Because when we get comfortable with that, eventually it's going to be my hand slid down past your elbow and you were still totally relaxed and comfortable and it slid all the way down to the ankle, right? And that's when a dog starts going, oh wait, is she going for my foot? Right? We want to set them up to be as comfortable as possible during this process. But this is petting and this is relaxed together and two hands. Okay, so you might have a hand on your dog's head while you're touching the elbow and sliding down the elbow, right? You might be touching your dog's shoulder while you're working toward the base of their tail. You might be one hand someplace comfortable and the other hand exploring an area that they're a little bit sensitive about, but not necessarily afraid. We don't want to push them to being afraid. We want them to be a little bit aware that we're going to try something different. And in the next part, we're going to talk a little bit about naming what we're doing because that makes this whole process so much faster. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Naming what we're doing is really important for many dogs. I want you to think of it as narrating a story. When we're telling dogs about the areas we're touching and the tools that we use, because dogs learn key words and they learn them pretty quickly. I think most of us know dogs that understand words like walk, outside, treats, right? They've caught on. We didn't actually teach them most of those words. They've figured them out. Go for a ride. For my own dogs, it's any version of wanna. Want to go for a ride, want to go out, want to come in, right? We talk pretty often, and the things that mean something to the dog are the things that they put together really, really quickly. And then they also catch on to our actions and what we are doing. So another example are things like when I put on my sneakers, when I grab my keys, when I open a bag of chips. Those aren't things that I ever taught my dog to care about. Those are things that the dog has figured out. I see that happening, and sometimes it means good things for me. Sometimes it means something to me. And that could be good things, or it could be stuff that the dog doesn't like. For many dogs, it's when somebody brings the vacuum cleaner out. Before they even plug it in, the dog is like, oh my God, they're going to be doing the vacuuming. I want to get to a quiet room, right? So they catch on to our actions, they catch on to our words. So we can use that during handling. Let me give you a few examples. If I'm working on a dog who's worried about having their ears touched, I spend some time naming what I am touching. So it might start off with, this is your neck. I'm touching your neck. I'm touching your cheek. I'm touching your eye. I'm touching your jaw. This is your chin, touching your head, touching your ear. Right? Just give them an idea of those things have names. And then I might move on to, this is a brush. This is a comb. This is a brush on your neck. This is a comb on your neck. This is my hand on your chin, right? A hand or a toy. For many dogs, if they are worried, they already have some exposure to something that makes them worried. You could do it with stuffed toys. And most dogs have a bunch of names for stuffed toys. Like if I say it's his bee, or if it's Snoopy, or if it's a ball, or if it's Mr. Fish, right? They understand a lot of those words. So if I say, okay, I'm going to touch the bee right to your neck. That's the bee on your chin. That's the bee on your ear. Sometimes we can come up with ways to help them understand what those body parts are in a way that's not as scary. And stuffed toys are a nice way to do that because they don't mind stuffed toys most of the time. And if you're moving one of their toys up along their body, it's sort of this weird message of, wait, that's a fun thing. Why is the fun thing touching up against me in these weird ways, right? It's not the same kind of intensity that we tend to bring in with brushing. Like, well, okay, now we're using a brush or a comb or a Q-tip or whatever it is that we are working with. Sometimes just backtracking to touching areas and talking about it and touching it with something the dog is fine with. Sometimes it's a towel, especially in a grooming setting where I don't have toys. Sometimes I'll use the towel. It's kind of, I'll fold it up, bunched up in my hands. I'm like, okay, that's the towel on your hip and there's your ribs. And that's your elbow, now down your arm, that's your leg, that's your foot, right? So think about ways that we can touch them without necessarily using our hands and being grabby, because we are grabby monkeys. Or at least our dogs know that we are super, super grabby, right? Get used to telling them what those body parts are. Now, when they get used to us telling them what we are doing, then we can start using those words to tell them what we will be doing. Does that make sense? So what we are doing right now is, okay, I'm touching your neck, I'm touching your head, I'm touching your chin. And then we move on to, it's time to touch your chin. All right, coming for your chin with the scissors, coming to your chin with a towel, coming to your chin with Snoopy, right? Whatever silly toy, right? But going to touch your elbow, touch your hip, and not just areas that the dog is worried about, but naming as many areas as possible. That's your hip. I don't think dogs really care about what their hips are, right? But they're going to start understanding that we are naming these areas. They're going to start predicting what we're talking about in the same way that they predict things like want to go for a ride, want to go to the store, want to go get dog food. My dogs have different reactions for a lot of these words, which indicates to me that they recognize each of those words are very different and very often understand exactly what I'm talking about. So we can use that, right? Dogs understand a lot more about what's going on around them. And I want you to be thinking about when we're naming what we are doing, they start feeling it while we say the name. And then when we start telling them what we will be doing or what comes next, think about it this way. We're also telling them what is not happening next. Yeah, I know. Think about that for a second, right? So if we are telling them what is next, we're also telling them what is not next. So a dog that's worried about their toenails, if I tell them consistently when toe trimming is going to happen or when it's just brushing or scissoring, that means they can relax and let their guard down for all the other types of foot touching because I'm going to tell them when it's nail time. If that's the only part that they're worried about, and I start telling them, okay, I'm working down your leg, instead of being cautious as soon as a hand is moving toward a foot, they're now onto it that like, nope, she's going to tell me when it's time for toes. And until she tells me it's time for toes, she's doing other stuff and she's telling me exactly what she's doing. Does that make sense? So think about how much they catch on to, and that just by telling them what is happening, we're also telling them what is not happening. It means we are not trimming your toes right now these are scissors. I never trim your toes with my scissors. Please get your toenails away from my scissors. Please get your toenails away from my scissors. Right? So they start putting it together that there's a particular tool that we would use for nail trimming, and a particular way that we're going to hold your foot, and a particular thing that we're going to tell you about nail trimming. And that could be very individual. That could be individual for the dog. That could be individual for the owner, for the groomer, right? We can come up with a variety of ways to express this, but that leaves them the ability to understand when something's going to happen. Dogs don't like being snuck up on, and they don't like being tricked. So some of the dogs that get worried as soon as you even look toward their front leg are pretty sure that you're only looking at their front leg because you're going for their toenails. I used to work with a dog named Daisy, and Daisy was like that when I met her. She was already about 8, and she was convinced anybody going near her leg, they were just trying to get to her toenails, right? I know that's very anthropomorphic, but I'll tell you what, when she started learning that I'm touching your leg means I'm only touching your leg, and I'm touching your paw, brushing your paw, combing your paw, scissoring your paw, or just straight up exactly that, and that nail trimming is separate, she suddenly wasn't all that worried about touching her leg. She really didn't mind at all. And then when it was nail trimming time, that was the part that was challenging. Not the entirety of touching her legs, just the challenging part, which she quickly got over that too, because we worked on it. But for her to understand, oh, I don't have to be nervous about everything. Like, I don't have to be nervous that you walk through the door because you're not just here to trim my toes, right? I don't have to be nervous that you put me on a grooming table, because some dogs are nervous before anything happens because they just get it in their head, crap, it's toenail time, right? Or ear time, or they're going to touch my tail, right? If we start telling them exactly what we're doing, get into the habit of it, whether you're an owner or a groomer or a vet tech, just a couple minutes of like, while you're petting them anyway, while you're touching them anyway. Hey, that's your ear. Yeah, that's your ear. That's the top of your head. Oh, that's your eyebrow. Whatever words you pick. And if it's a dog that comes from a family that doesn't speak English, you might want to ask them what those words are. If they're using different words at home, I don't care what we call it, right? So if someone wants to teach me in Spanish or German or Portuguese, I'm like, okay, I'll try to keep that straight. Let me write those down, right? So that I can say the words that you're working on at home. But I want you to be thinking about giving the dog information will help them trust you. It will help them be calmer. And isn't that what we really want? So along with the first part that we talked about, with just getting them to trust you and touching them all over, but also naming it and naming the tools and naming what we're doing and helping them, just narrating what's going on. Right? We don't need them to actively touch things. We don't need them to actively indicate like, oh, there are 3 objects in front of me, touch the scissors. Nope, that's not what we're doing right now. That's not what we need right now. Right now, we just want them to know there's a rhyme and reason to what people are doing, and they're not just randomly grabbing at me. They're trying to tell me what they're going to do next. Much like a dentist might try to tell me what they're going to do next. And you know what? Some of what they're trying to tell me might be going right over my head because they're terms I don't know. But if they tell me the area they're working on, well, that makes sense to me. Or if they say the term a couple times while they're doing, well, that starts to make sense. We want to do the same thing with our dogs, much like we do with little kids, right? Okay, the doctor's going to put the stethoscope up against you and listen to your heart, right? But we're not going to use the same kind of full sentences unless that's what you choose to do. But dogs catch on to keywords. The words that mean something to them, they're going to catch on to. And they understand a lot more than we sometimes think. So if we spend time teaching them all of these words, that can really help build trust. So this week's action step is all about getting used to the idea of building trust, talking to owners about building trust, taking what your dog can handle and building on it and building on it. And the reason, telling them that it's important for them to be able to touch their dog anywhere. And if they can't do it at home, it's not likely to happen in a grooming shop any easier than it is at home. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video. If you're ready to go beyond the podcast, and I hope you do, I've made it really easy for you. If you go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step, you'll see all of the options. There's the Scholar Lounge community, there's the Modern Grooming Professional certification, there's Master Canine Stylist and Professional Canine Stylist diploma testings, there's the Behavior Lab for coaching and private one-on-one sessions with me, and of course the Master Groomer Behavior Specialist program. So go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and click on your next step.